Good afternoon. Hi, hello. I'm glad that you guys had a break since having lunch because I didn't want everybody to fall asleep at the last session, so thank you for that. My name's Lawrence Cunningham, and I will be your moderator today for the digital advertising panel. Professionally, I have the opportunity to support the students that run the Iowa State Daily, and I'm excited to be here today, so thank you. Our panel today is really looking at the changing landscape in the digital advertising space, and we're going to discuss how businesses are navigating the increasingly complex environment that still ensures that clients have the opportunity to effectively connect with consumers. And I think with the panelists that we have here today, you're gonna find out that they have a variety of viewpoints that will offer insights on both management and monetization strategies that are being employed on the front lines today. So by way of introduction, closest to me, I'm going to introduce my friend Jeff White. Jeff is the Vice President of Business Development and Strategy for Flynn Wright. Next to Jeff, we have Kim Guthrie. Kim is the President of Cox Media Group. Next we have Mirtha. Mirtha Vaca-Wilkens is the Senior Project Manager for Communique USA. And on the end, we have Jerry Hoehle. Jerry is KCCI Digital Sales Manager, and he's here also representing Hearst. So thank you all for being here. We're going to get started with just a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up early for you all to ask questions. I know there's been lots of interest in digital advertising and have lots of people that are asking questions along earlier today. So the first question that I have that I want to throw your way, and I'm going to give each person an opportunity to answer this question. I'd like you to identify one trend or major disruption in digital advertising that your company has had to navigate. Jeff, we'll start with you.
All right, so I'll talk about a trend in a good way, an innovation that for some reason was a surprise, but I'm not sure why. And that is the idea, and we talked about this during the last session, that really every communication channel is for sale. And that shouldn't be that profound or surprising because that's really the fundamental basis of advertising is the monetization of our earliest communication channels. But how many people remember when we were having discussions about Facebook and whether they would ever monetize themselves? And we were, are they going to sell advertising? Well, of course they are, because they can, which is great for us as advertisers, because when Facebook and similar channels sell advertising, that gives us a tremendous opportunity to target our audience, and we'll talk more about targeting as we get through this. But even subscription-based channels, when XM radio, satellite radio first came on, there was no advertising, and that was a good reason for a lot of buyers to buy satellite radio. Well, now there's advertising on satellite radio. Wherever advertising can be sold, it will be sold, and that's good for us as advertisers, but I think that was an interesting disruption over the last 5 years that really was a surprise. Shouldn't have been again, but it became a surprise because any channel is for sale as a communication channel and an advertising channel, and I think that's a good thing.
So we have a combination of newspapers, radio stations, and television stations. Other than newspaper subscriptions, we make 100% of our revenue comes in through advertising. So the thing that kind of freaks me out is the OTT space, over the top, and what's happening in television. And if you've got a smart TV, we are conditioning the viewer to see that they can watch content without seeing a single commercial. So I sat and binge watched all of This Is Us in like one night. And the spots that ran in there were from NBC Network, not from the local NBC affiliate. I was living in New York at the time. So I think the fact that, to your point, people really don't like advertising. And I think the younger woman earlier on one of the earlier said that, what was the phrase she used, Kenny? Adpocalypse. So we've kind of killed the golden goose a bit, and to the point where people don't want commercials, and if they can get great content from people that used to be simply distributors like Netflix or Amazon or Hoehle, and now these people are all creating really amazing content, award-winning content with no commercials. So now we're competing with that. If we can't monetize our news, whether it's print or television or radio, we're out of business. So that's a holy crap moment for me. That 3 a.m. I wake up and go, whoa, my God, what are we gonna do? So that's a reality, and this is a business. So we talk a lot about great content, and we want to win awards and do awesome investigative journalism, but journalism needs to meet capitalism. We are running a for-profit business, and if we can't sell advertising, then we're gonna have to figure it out another way, and I don't know what that is.
Kim, that's great. And I'd like to piggyback on that and just provide some context around my work at Communique USA. We're a marketing firm, and we are consultants that are embedded with primary clients. So over the last 2 years, I've been embedded with Chick-Fil-A, Inc., which is headquartered out of Atlanta, Georgia. And so I've had the opportunity to experience what it's like to serve the senior advertising manager and see Chick-fil-A in a period of time where it's going through great change with regards to its branding, its positioning. And one of the biggest disruptions that we have seen is very much aligned with your line of thinking. It's we still need to reach our loyal customers, and we need to figure out ways to engage those customers and keep that conversation going. And what we're doing is leveraging data more around all of the decisions that we make with regards to how we reach out to our audiences. So we have a new philosophy at Chick-fil-A, which is modern marketing, and everything is driven by data in decisions that we're making around how we speak to our audiences, and always driving them back to our brand affinity and reach, and making sure that they're educated and understand our products and love our products. And that's kind of something, it's an experiment, because there's a lot of failure that's happening right now too for us. We're testing things out. Some of it is failing and some of it is succeeding. So we just have to be nimble and just keep learning from our mistakes.
So I'm the digital sales manager for KCCI. Television stations haven't had any digital disruption, I don't think, right? I have been doing digital sales in the television space for some time, about 15 years at this point. And so my big disruption has been programmatic advertising, where it used to be when I was first at WHO in this space, I could sell, and I still love the banner ad. I don't care what anybody says. It's better than you think. But when I was at WHO, it was this cool graphic that you could put on the website and do something that was more of a creative sell for the advertiser, and loved that aspect of it. And then the advent of ad exchanges and programmatic inventory and data, and how all other publishers in some way, shape, or form could ultimately get access to my inventory, how agencies could get access to my inventory at KCCI. And that was a huge disruption. Trying to understand that ultimately it's about our clients, and how can we give the client the best experience possible. And then how can Hearst, and so, KCCI is owned by Hearst. We own a lot of different things. We have about 25, I think, iconic magazine brands, 30 plus television and radio stations. We're major owners of ESPN, A&E Networks, Lifetime, the History Channel. And what's happened in my world now is not only do I have KCCI's inventory to sell, but I get first bid, first look on all of the inventory that Hearst has for my local consumers, and even beyond my local consumers. I have deals with businesses now as a sales manager here in Des Moines, Iowa, where we're working things for people that are on each coast, and doing some things for a company that they're builders in Alaska right now. And so now I have all of Hearst inventory, and I also have all of the data that Hearst has in terms of the online footprint from the users that visit all of our published properties. And so it's sort of come full circle, but that was a big eye-opener for me, and it really had to change the way we sell once we realized that a lot of other people other than just KCCI had access to our inventory.
Great. Jerry, you brought up programmatic advertising, and I think from a publisher's perspective, that's something that we're finding is incredibly important to ensure that we're monetizing unused space. Can we build on that just a little bit? And can people, and we'll open this up to whoever, but can we talk about some of the things that you're doing now that maybe you weren't doing previously? Programmatic might be an example of that, but I'm sure that there's several other things.
Absolutely. So, and I'm not on the sales side in terms of monetizing the inventory that we don't sell locally on KCCI. But just so everybody knows, every ad impression on KCCI's website, and virtually every other publisher that's out there right now, is monetized in one way, shape, or form, even if people at that local published property don't sell it directly. Outside of the programmatic world, where we're not just selling, again, the inventory on our own website, we're selling inventory and giving ourselves first bid, first look across Hearst platform. But from a KCCI standpoint, specifically in terms of the things that we're selling and some of the other disruption that's happened, would be, we're building websites for clients. We're doing SEM and SEO for clients. We're doing native advertising and helping our clients tell their stories both on video platforms and in the regular written word. Leveraging other business units that Hearst owns really in a very direct way, where our branded content division is through the San Francisco Chronicle and a group called the Story Studio. And we work with the Story Studio to write content for our advertisers. And so we now have to have a full funnel approach for those that we serve. We've got to be thinking about how do we create awareness for our advertisers? How do we then, in the middle of that consumer path to purchase, how do we reach out to people in a more targeted fashion and make sure that if we're looking for auto intenders for the car dealer, to find those people that are looking to buy a car. And then even at the bottom of the funnel, leveraging SEM and SEO campaigns to help users and websites, manage the full funnel process from awareness all the way down to purchase. And so the account executive at a television station today kind of has to know a lot of things. You got to really be smart about all media. And it just changed our whole perspective. We have to be sort of mini agencies in and of ourselves.
To expand on that, I would say that at Chick-Fil-A, one of the things that has happened with all of the disruption is there was a reorganization of the brand advertising and marketing teams. So there was a clear realization from those folks that they were too siloed. So we had an advertising team, we had a team that was just dedicated to public relations, a team just dedicated to activations, experiential, and there was a need internally after just thinking about how the consumer needs to hear our message, that we needed to flatten that. We needed to flatten the team, and so we were real deliberate about flattening the organization. So now we have an integrated media team where there are representatives from advertising, brand, we have activations teams in there. We also have the public relations team there, corporate communications team there, and we also have folks from the production side. So folks that work on product development and innovation for Chick-fil-A are also part of those conversations. So we're making decisions that are much more robust because we're thinking about the entire team, and that team is sensitized to the consumer's experience at different levels, and it creates a much better end product as far as the content that we put up on the internet, whether it be through programmatic. I'd have to say that the Chick-fil-A brand is still fairly nascent, and we're still learning how to best leverage programmatic, but it's something that we've seen some real strong early results in our use of programmatic. We're also, with the brand, what we're doing is also making sure that advertising is actually creating the content that we then repurpose. I was sharing something that I'd like to share with you if you haven't seen it. If there are any Chick-fil-A fans out there, has anyone heard of the hashtag Rivalry Restaurant campaign? So if you haven't, I invite you to take a look at hashtag Rivalry Restaurants. We decided to explore as a large team, this integrated media team, let's look at where we have most of our media dollars allocated right now as a business. And most of our media dollars were allocated in college football. So how could we leverage those dollars, reach an audience that already has great brand loyalty, and expand the brand awareness in those markets? And so we took that strategy and did something integrated across the board with our Rivalry Restaurants. And what we did was we actually built a trailer at the Georgia-Alabama line for the Georgia-Auburn game, where we brought fans, loyal customers. We invited them to come out to this one location where we had our Chick-fil-A trailer. Half of it was Georgia, half of it was Auburn, and we had fans from both sides come out. They were able to get free Chick-fil-A sandwiches, waffle fries. We had a main stage where you could get, you could win tickets to the Cotton Bowl, the Peach Bowl. It was a full day experience that we created. And while folks were there, we had cameras that were on site, so we were able to Twitter and do live feeds of Rivalry Restaurants. So we had a huge following that came from that actual experience, and it also produced we were able to produce a 30-second spot from that experience. And now there's discussions about extending that to different markets and different regions, this whole Rivalry Restaurant experience. So at Chick-fil-A, we realized that we have to think about the full funnel, create that content, and leverage all of the digital channels in order to reach our benchmarks that we need to in sales for the company. So it's quite interesting. We're almost an advertising agency internally as well.
I would just say there's been a ton of change. If you think of what Kathy O's panel was earlier today, the joke was about how newspaper's been a nonprofit for a while, ha ha ha. Well, I have 4 newspapers, so I feel the pain. I mean, the newspaper business is really hard. It's really expensive to print a paper. You have to print it, and then you have to get it to someone's freaking driveway. I mean, it is expensive. And reporter, you want to do great news, but it's still, you know, you think of the pennies that you're charging for a newspaper. It's our newspaper division. We have 4 big papers: the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Austin American-Statesman in Austin, Texas, the Palm Beach Post in Florida, and the Dayton Daily News. Our company's 120 years old. It's private, family-run, and the newspaper is hemorrhaging. It is a pumping chest wound for my business because the print advertising drops every year 15%. And so I've been president for about a year and 3 months, and I had some of these newspaper reps, and we also have a lot of TV stations and radio stations, lots of different salespeople. But the newspaper sellers were like, you know, I don't really feel like selling digital. I really like just selling print ads. And I was like, you know, I don't really feel like having you work here anymore because it's just not an option. I mean, newspaper, if we just think we're going to drive this plane into the ground, I'm not interested in that. So digital has become, although a threat, also a savior in many ways. So to your point about our sellers across all radio, TV, and newspaper have to be hybrid sellers. They have to understand marketing and how to bring great solutions to their customers. If it's Chick-Fil-A, how to bring the show and the sizzle and all the other cool stuff besides just schlepping ads. And I think that is a very big difference today for what we do. We're not trying to get in the agency business, but we're trying to solve problems for our customers. And we're going to an integrated model in many of our markets where we have a newspaper, a TV station, and maybe a group of radio stations. So we are kind of jamming them all together, and it's like, figure it out, because this is not going to continue with 3 silos. We're going to run as a group, and we're going to flank each other and be a united front. And we feel that we will survive better in the long haul doing that, because radio is flat in terms of revenue to -2, and television is, we started off in Q1 -8%. So that starts to feel really similar to a newspaper business. I can't have 3 platforms on fire. So digital comes to the rescue, and programmatic is a frenemy also. To me, it's kind of low junk that I don't really want. I want to be able to have my humans go out and sell that stuff along with the traditional media. And I think that is our strategy to outlast the competition and to make the brands viable for a long time, because there's a lot of disruption. You can get your news right here. You don't have to wait for the 10 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news to see who did well today in the Masters. It's right here. And so that's a big deal. There's a lot of people getting to our consumers before we can. So we've got to figure out how to be more nimble and more agile and sell more stuff to our clients.
From an agency perspective, whether it's programmatic buying or just the sheer ability to target consumers and audiences more effectively, cost-effectively with digital, what we're finding over the last 5 years is that we have a lot of clients who have budgets that would not normally have gotten them very far in consumer advertising using mainstream channels. And typically we would like to pair digital and mainstream and other channels, direct response channels. We have some clients who simply don't have the budget to market nationally or regionally using television or radio, but we can very cost effectively make a couple of $100,000 go a long way using digital, whether it's programmatic or targeted channels, and that has brought a lot of new players into the market, I think, from a consumer advertising standpoint.
Very good, thank you. Kim, I want to follow up a little bit on some of the comments that you made. I think what we're seeing is a little bit of the name of the game is do more with less, and you're having to be experts across multiple platforms. There are lower barriers to entry for different organizations to come in and compete. I'm curious, as you continue to have to do more and some of your core products are underperforming, what kind of impact does that have on staffing, and how do you think through that process to make difficult decisions?
Well, we just made a decision to sell 2 of those newspapers. So one of the papers we'd owned 60 years and one for 40. So I had to go upstairs to my boss, the family member, and say, you know, this is really hard. We're in the deep end, and I feel like, you know, broadcast is kind of holding its own, but the newspaper business, because the model the legacy costs of printing a paper are so outrageous. And you still have these zealots who love their printed paper, and I'm one of those people. I love the Wall Street Journal. I like to touch it and hold it. I have the digital thing, and I can get in there, but I feel like I'm missing half the paper for whatever reason. I like to hold it. I like to have my coffee, and so there's some people like that, and we want to continue to print that paper for those people. But we're just having to make tougher decisions. Radio, TV, and newspaper used to be 3 totally different businesses in our company with separate presidents, separate regional vice presidents, and all the way down. And we are putting these newspaper and television reporters in the same newsroom. So these are people who are like type A. They want to go get the kill and do the investigative story. And someone else earlier today was talking about the public records, and we found this huge thing in Atlanta where we stumbled on it. We were trying to get something from the mayor's office, and they weren't giving it to us, and they were supposed to. And so we're gonna go to the mattresses over this. But it's the newspaper and the TV guys are finally aligned because we feel like we've been equally insulted. So sometimes you need a common enemy to pull everyone together. But so trying to get the kids to play nice sounds, so it'll be great. We'll put them all together and they'll just get along. And it doesn't happen that way at home with your kids. It's not happening that way with my folks either. But trying to get them to understand the enemy is outside and we are stronger together than we are divided. On the sales side, I think it's a local marketing solutions approach, exactly like everyone else has been talking about. You just don't say, I'm going to put all my eggs in this television basket and buy, traditional television and have that be it. You've got to have a multimedia approach to actually be effective. And again, I think digital is a great way to help boost all of that. It just, you see it, you hear it, you see it now. It's, the cookies on your computer, it's being fed to you in your Facebook feed. And we sell all that. We resell Google, we resell Facebook, and our clients love that. They, if you're busy, if you run a carpet store, you don't want to be messing with all this. You want someone to do it for you, and maybe you have an ad agency, but maybe you don't. And you trust your local sales rep and say, look, I love your TV stuff that you sell me. What else can you do? And we have a full fulfillment arm. We do about $160 million of just digital that we built from scratch because our clients want it, and they trust us. The Cox name has been around a long time. So that's something that we think we can leverage. We're not the biggest, but we do have local scale in the markets that we're in, so we need to take advantage of that.
I want to shift gears just a little bit. Earlier today, we spent time talking about the importance of data to drive content decisions. I'm wondering if you all can speak to the importance of how you use data to drive support cases for advertisers.
I can take that one. The abilities that digital has brought us and all of our fine digital channels and all the data that they all have on customers, which is good and bad. We've talked about that today, right? The ability to target all of us and for us as advertisers to target all of you. That with it comes the need for more data. So data is driven by smart usage of data. And so we have, for example, the ability to go to an advertising channel and they tell us exactly who they can target, and they tell us exactly how they target these individuals and what these individuals have in their behaviors and everything else and their lifestyles. Well, we need to know who our current customers are, who our best customers are, and who our targets are. So we need to go through an exercise first of taking all the data that we have on our current business for our clients, or on our client's current business, profile it, model it, and then take it over to the advertising channel side and say, okay, these are the types of customers that we would like to target. So how can we match that up? So I guess my belabored point there is that the more data that is available on the advertising channel side, the more we're going to need on the customer side or the agency side to be able to leverage it effectively.
I would say that we lean in on agencies like yours at Chick-Fil-A to help with some of those recommendations as far as understanding our customer. And I mentioned just earlier that the rebranding at Chick-Fil-A. One of the exercises that we went through is the obvious question is, why should there be a rebrand at Chick-Fil-A? It has a great legacy of branding with its cow, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But we saw in our data, we were very deliberate about leaning in on experts, looking at the data of where Chick-fil-A was right now at this time with its customer. The brand itself has a really strong, loyal base of customers, but we saw that they were only coming to us on a very limited occasion. They would come, but not as often as we would like them to come. So we knew that there was opportunity there for us to further engage that audience that's super loyal for us. And so with data as our friend, we have come up with personas, digital personas of who we are reaching. And the two primary personas that are the loyal customers for Chick-fil-A are the busy balancer and the functional eater. So with the idea of who these personas are, we're able to build content and be much more deliberate around the messaging that we deliver these folks based on those personas that's driven by the data. So I think that that's just an example of how we're leveraging data internally to help with content development and how we're reaching those audience to really, make sure that we're selling chicken sandwiches.
So similarly, data's our friend too. And when we're working with clients, I think one of the things that I've experienced that we all kind of trust our guts. And I think business owners have a certain gut level emotion of who their customers are, who their best customers are. I've been surprised how oftentimes they can be wrong. And a lot of times the data will tell you that they're potentially wrong. And for instance, we had a home remodeler that wanted to target residences, areas of the community that were more older homes that was high income area. And what the data came back after the campaign had ran for a while, we were getting the best conversions on an area of town that was more new construction. And it was really the people that had just purchased a house that was more likely to remodel it. And we kind of flipped the script on the campaign a little bit. And so that's been real eye-opening, I think, to kind of let go of the gut check, whether you're from a sales perspective or from a business owner perspective, and let the data guide you.
I would just add, too, on the research front, we've always, in television and radio specifically, have researched our audiences to see what they want in terms of news coverage, the kinds of stories, but even the type of people that we think we're reaching versus who we really are reaching or who watches news. We serve some really diverse markets, and so we do something called the Kofsky Report, where they come in and analyze your newscast for 3 days, every second of the coverage. Who did you talk to? What did they look like? How old were they? And we found that we had like the man on the street interview, that we would be in a fairly diverse market, but we're always talking, no offense, to the white guy. And it was like, you got a 35% African American town, and you're putting every white guy on TV. That you got to talk to people that look like the people watching your news. And so we tried to really, really stay close to who we think we're reaching and who we really are reaching, and making sure that we're serving it up in a fashion that people say, I have to watch WSB Channel 2 because that is my newscast, instead of, I don't know who these people are that they're interviewing all the time, but it's not me. And sometimes even in the newspaper, we would say, or our editors would say, well, I know what the reader wants. Really, have you ever asked them? So we would do research, and it would come back, we're over here with maybe a bias of the newspaper, as most papers do have a lean, but the people who actually are subscribing to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution are over here. So you can't lead them to your viewpoint. That's never happening. They'll just stop subscribing. So stay tuned.
I think your comment about audience feedback is great, so I think with that we're going to go ahead and open up the floor to see if there's any questions from you. I do have one question that I'd like you to answer before we round out the panel today, but with that I'd open it up to see if there's any questions from the audience for the panel.
I'd like to pick up on your comment just now. You can't lead them to your view. Does that mean that you heard maybe in your earlier session that you're saying somewhat the opposite, in that we as journalists have a responsibility to lead them to the correct news product.
I think we have a responsibility to uncover and protect the communities we serve in terms of holding the powerful accountable. So I think that part is absolutely accurate. But I'll give you a quick example. We have several Fox affiliates that were, Fox 23 and Fox 25 and Fox 13. Well, we found out in Boston, people hate Fox. And we're not Fox News. We just happen to carry Fox programming. And we picked up this Boston station. And we did a research, people, and I was getting like emails like, we hate your station, you guys suck, you're way off on the right, and we're, this is Boston, it's like the bluest state in the country. And they thought just by the mere, identity of the network that we were affiliated with meant that we were owned by Fox News, and we're not. But then we also have a Fox affiliate in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in Memphis, Tennessee. They love Fox. So guess what we did? We stopped identifying ourselves in Boston as Fox 25, and we continued to call ourselves Fox. But we did the market research locally for each market instead of saying, everyone hates Fox, let's take it off all the stations. Or if we only listen to Tennessee and Oklahoma, let's keep Fox, everyone loves it. So I think you've got to be in tune that way. I do really believe, as a journalist by training, graduate of 1984, that we have an obligation to hold the powerful accountable. So I'm not saying anything about that, but I do think the tone of in how we give that news has to be very neutral. I do think the newspapers generally get to be tilted, and they always have. You know, this paper's known for is the Wall Street Journal leaning left or leaning right? Everybody in this room knows the answer to that. Does the New York Times lean left or right? Does the Washington Post lean which way? We all know that. I think generally television news should not ever lean. It needs to be straight down the middle, and otherwise you're going to get colored with the same stuff that people call, you know, the network news and network cable. That's the fake news. Local affiliates need to be independent of that, and again, I think that local research tells you where you need to be for that market, and you have to listen to it.
Dave?
I'd like to ask, it seems like digital advertising is held to an unfair standard. It seems like ever since digital advertising has been there that we've had to discount as banner ads have gotten so, everywhere that the price keeps getting, CPMs keep driving down. You have undelivered emails, sorry, we're going to discount you again. And it just seems like with each turn, because it's so measurable, that we're in a race to the bottom. And I worry that, like with programmatic, are we really racing to the bottom with digital advertising? I'd like to know what you think.
I'll take that at least at some level here. Certainly I feel the same way in a lot of respects. I think there are different tools that are coming up every day that allow us to sell the premium, the homepage takeover that's going to command some attention for somebody, or the native article that's going to be written that's going to truly educate about a brand and tell that brand's story beyond just what the banner ad can do. So while there is somewhat of a race to the bottom, while that's, I think with all the competition that's come into play and the fact that so many different publishers, agencies have access to the publisher's inventory, it's created so much competition that there is a pressure on the rate. I think that one of the things that's happening, though, is we're getting better as sellers to tell that story about the effectiveness of the banner ad, the simple metric now, being viewed through. Just to be able to go to an advertiser, where when I first started at HO selling digital ads 15 years ago, and it was not a commodity, it was a cool graphic on a web page, and it turned into that commodity as we started selling it at a cost per thousand level. But all I could tell my advertisers about were how many times the ad was viewed or clicked on, and we all know how many people click on banner ads. Literally, how many people click on banner ads? I'm curious. Nobody does, right? Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're not working, because somebody that sees a banner ad, we can now talk to our advertisers about the people that see those ad units, don't necessarily click, but still end up going to their webpage through view-through and other metrics. And I think over time, that type of ad solution is going to continue to hold its place. I don't think the banner ad's going away. I think it's got an important role in the whole marketing funnel and the path to purchase. And so it's happening, but it's not necessarily a bad thing because things are changing.
I guess the counterpoint to the digital banner is at Chick-Fil-A, one of the decisions that was made a little over a year ago was to forego banner ads altogether as part of our media mix. And that was primarily based on research that we'd done on the different platforms that we were leveraging for advertising, and there was just not a return on investment from putting ads on digital banners. But we are very, very intentional in the media mix that we do put in markets. And to just provide some context, with Chick-fil-A, there is market segmentation. So we've done research around each individual region where there are Chick-fil-A stores, identifying the consumers that are in that particular market, what messaging resonates best with them, going beyond demographics and also just figuring out who are we speaking to in that particular market with the advertising that we're using. So in one market, we may leverage billboards and television over radio and digital. So each market has a media mix that's appropriate to that audience that we're speaking to, and that's all driven by data and research and what is keeping sales up in each one of our stores. So it's a really unique model that we use, and it's very, very segmented. It's based on what's happening, much like Kim mentioned. For us, it's like what region, what media works best in each region, and that's the media mix that we're using.
So I'm going to add one thing on the digital front. About 50% of all dollars in digital are wasted because it's caught up in bot traffic. I mean, it's fraudulent. And so that hurts everybody. You know, if you've ever been on a website and you see the crap at the bottom, the clickbait, like, find out why Angelina Jolie isn't going to do this. You're like, oh my God, what is it? I have to know. And you know, you go down the rabbit hole, and like an hour later, you're like, what happened? I'm on the 70th slide of that. I don't even know what happened. But while you're in there, there's so much junk coming at you and you don't even see it. And if you ever really pay attention, and it's all that bot traffic, it's garbage, and it's just, you're getting fired like 6, and every time, go to the next page, and 6 or 8 more ads come in. You don't even see those ads. That gives digital a bad name because someone's paying for every one of those and you're not seeing any of it. So that's item one. The other is that the toll takers along the way, they say like 40% of all digital revenue that's spent actually gets to the publisher. Meaning there's all these people, or I call it lots of straws in the drink. Everybody wants to, gotta pay me a point. Pretty soon the publisher's like, why can't I get any revenue? Well, because everyone's been taking their toll along the way. So everybody wants some of this, and it's kind of out of control, frankly. This bot stuff is crazy. You can put all these like throttles on it on your website to make sure that you don't do that to people and you're not paying for ads that are never seen by human beings, but it's a real problem. And I think that actually helps kind of support traditional legacy media. You still have radio that reaches 93% of Americans every week. Television still gets people elected. I mean, there's still really great stories to be told about the traditional media that we sell. Digital's kind of the shiny toy, but there's all this crap that comes with it that really we find ourselves talking about that a lot, that it looks good. Oh, yeah, you can target the person. But meanwhile, all that stuff has happened to every single person in this room. And we kind of think, well, that's just the one time I was in there. No, it happens every single time, and someone's paying for all that, and it's just junk.
You know, Dave, we're kind of challenged on the agency side, too, by the misunderstanding of the value of digital media. You know, going all the way back to when clients would say, well, instead of mailing that, let's email it because it's free, right? I mean, how much could that cost? And we have the same thing with placement of digital media. Clients don't understand that takes more work to plan it and apply the data and the strategy, and the results might be better in some cases, but it takes more work to report it, but clients would like it at the same rate. So we're always working through that as well. A colleague of mine said that in some ways clients view digital media as disposable media because it's there and then it's gone and you move on to the next thing, so how much could it really be worth? Which is why I think along a lot of these points, we're always moving toward the idea that it's not immediate, necessarily. Certainly, there are elements of digital media that can be analyzed quickly through click-throughs and traffic and following traffic through websites, but there's a lot of digital media that's used for awareness purposes, which means that we may need to evaluate it like we've been evaluating traditional news sources, and that's going to take some time, and that's going to point to a different kind of value than the immediate click or whatever else.
With all the paid communications channels available today and sponsored content and native advertising, do you think there's still a place for media relations and earned coverage? Or is it all pay to play?
Are you looking at me?
Yes, and I'm a public, as Keely knows, I'm a public relations person by training, and most of my career was in public relations. I absolutely think so. And one of the primary reasons, and we've talked a lot about this today, which is why I looked at you, Kim, because we need to help the general public and our target audiences understand the difference between news and entertainment. And even within news, there's different kind of news. Not necessarily all fake news, but rumor, irresponsible news reporting. I think the idea of utilizing credible news sources to carry forth our messages from an earned editorial standpoint is is good. And I certainly think there's still a place for it. And I think that once all the dust settles, our audiences understand who the credible news sources are and where they're going to go for that source of information, and they're going to understand what's editorial and what's advertising. And I think editorial still has that credibility that it's always had.
I also think just branding in general. I think Chick-Fil-A has probably one of the best nationwide brands. I don't know how we all know this, but we just do. There's an interesting story about maybe 2 months ago. The Atlanta airport had a massive electrical outage, and my kids were actually visiting, and they were going to fly back to New York that day, and we were off, shooting pool or drinking a beer or something on Sunday before they were going to fly back, and all of a sudden, someone on their phone, oh gosh, our flight's been delayed. Oh, it's been delayed again, and then all of a sudden, it's all over our phones that there's a massive power outage. I mean, this is the biggest airport in the country, and Chick-fil-A on a Sunday came in, opened up their restaurant. They're not open on Sunday because they believe, I don't know what the exact wording is, but that's against the rules for Chick-fil-A, and so that people can observe the Lord or whatever. So they come in to the airport and they open the restaurant and they feed all these crazy travelers who are stuck there because they were closed for like 24 hours or something, maybe 36 hours. But I remember watching that happen, and I thought, that is brilliant. That is so smart. They went against their own firm's belief to take care of all these people. I mean, you couldn't buy that publicity. And guess who covered it? My TV station. So it was just beautiful, and that was so on brand. I just thought, wow, whoever did that. So I don't know if you had anything to do with that, sister.
Yeah, so it was a situation where we needed to respond, and as a brand, it laddered up. And the decision was made that this is something that the brand needs to do. We need to respond to it. We're right there. We can serve. We can serve in that moment. And Chick-fil-A is a servant organization by its very nature. And this was something that we just did instinctively. It wasn't, and so the public relations team, of course, rallied around it and really provided the support that was needed to make sure that the messaging got out there, that everyone knew that we did this, but it was really the people that told the story, so it was very organic, and that happens a lot with our brand because of our loyal customer base.
I would just add that as somebody that gets a lot of call-ins from people that think that news is something that they can pay money to get on and that type of thing, and just has a lot of touch points with advertisers where they don't necessarily know how to reach out to the news department and manage PR effectively. I think there's still definitely a space for PR professionals in the industry. I think it's great that Native is there. I think that it's cool that brands have an ability to pay to tell their stories, because I think consumers want to learn those stories too. And it's I think a great balance, but the lack of effective communication with news departments is certainly a real thing, and we need PR people to help them do that better.
Other questions? Chris?
Yeah, I was just curious if you push the timeline out maybe 5 years or so, and maybe that's a little too far, but what do you see as some trends potentially coming down the line that we should be thinking about?
I'm going to be on a lot more Ambien. Because I got to tell you, it scares me, to be honest. I think with traditional media, we have not seen this amount of change since the beginning of these the three platforms that I'm overseeing. I think digital can be somewhat of a savior. I also think it's a frenemy. There's goods and bads. Social media, same sort of thing. It's good and bad. We've tried to build businesses. There's a lot of talk in that earlier panel about Facebook, and you can get a lot of great what we call side door traffic by having good posts in Facebook that lead people back to our website. But you should never really build your business based on the benevolence of another company. And when they changed that newsfeed algorithm rule, one of our sites that lost like 70% of their traffic. So they were like, it's like crack. You're hooked on it, and then you can't get off. And now suddenly they knock you off, and you're going cold turkey without the Facebook side door traffic. So I think that lesson, there will be something else. If it's not Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or Twitter or whatever, there will be something else, I think, in the next 5 years. The OTT thing, to me, really, we're conditioning people that you can get really excellent content just by paying a Hulu subscription or Netflix or whatever it is. So I think that subscription model, it's a matter of how many $10 a month deals can you take. CBS's over-the-top strategy is a very minimal, nominal monthly fee. All the other networks are free. But I think you might, when you see NBC, CBS, and ABC follow suit with that, follow CBS's lead, so I think people will sign up for that, and then eventually they'll be like, well, geez, this is as much as my cable bill was, so why did I cut the cord, and I'm paying all this money over here? So I think you'll see a lot of change there, too, whether, right now cord cutting is still going on, but people still need great internet and broadband service, so they still, and we have Cox Cable, which is not my division, but I think you may see the pendulum kind of come back a little bit. I also think regulation is a very interesting thing right now when you look at what broadcast is required to do in terms of community service. We have public licenses and public spectrum for radio and television, and we're required to serve our communities. Facebook isn't required to do that. Google isn't required. Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, none of these people are required to do that. We are. But they just completely are cannibal. They're taking all of our business. So it feels a little unfair, but I think right now in this current FCC very deregulated environment, and again, I think the FCC kind of goes from one extreme to the other. Tom Wheeler was super regulated and everything was clamped down, and now you have, a very open administration and let the ponies run. And I don't know that that's exactly where we should be. Somewhere in the middle feels right, but I think you can't have it both ways. Facebook, Google, some of these guys, the FANG companies are all off, running like crazy with no regulation, no throttle, and I feel like that's a little unfair. So I think you'll see more in the regulatory environment in the next few years too, which I couldn't predict which way that's going to go, but it scares me.
I think from a single brand perspective, what I see happening just with my current experience with Chick-Fil-A is there's been lots of discussions on us as a premier brand partnering up with other premier brands. And there's even been some discussions had about could there potentially be a spin-off that just produces content that resonates with us as a brand. So brands are thinking about becoming content producers, and we are in that mix of having those discussions at this point. So who knows, in 5 years from now, Chick-fil-A may have a different brand that's just producing content that really resonates with its brand, with who it is as a brand, and that could be a new line of revenue. Chick-fil-A is also looking into retail and is already exploring and has explored how to leverage the brand with T-shirts, with tchotchkes, purses, all kinds of gadgets that have the brand featured on it, and is very successful with our preliminary testing around that. So I think brands are looking at different streams of revenue and how to optimize those streams of revenue. If you have a really strong brand with a loyal following, they'll buy your product, whether it's the food that you're selling or the t-shirt that you sell or the content that you may produce online or on traditional television or radio for them.
I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years. I think that, from my chair, I think things are going to continue to, the less with more topic, I think is a real thing. We're going to continue to have to, as media sellers, know all platforms and learn all platforms and sell all platforms. And I think brands themselves are going to get more knowledgeable about in terms of creating their own content and implementing their own campaigns, their own marketing departments. And there's going to be more commingling between publishers and agencies and those brands and in a lot of different ways. But boy, I wish I had that crystal ball.
I think, going back to my original comments, I think that all of the channels now that don't have advertising vehicles will. The more information they gather on their audiences, that's sellable information, especially to advertisers, which opens up more channels for us as advertisers, which is good. We work a lot in the cable business, so we too as an agency are concerned about cord cutters and what that will do for our clients' business. But ideally, the internet needs will still win out, and we'll still have opportunities to monetize their product and drive individuals and audiences to what they are continuing to sell at that point.
Joel, you have a question?
Real quick, Everything is talked about audience analysis and data and things like that, but that all works up in the brain and in the head. And we know that really great creative, and I teach creative, is we feel it in the gut, we feel it in the heart. And so how do you balance all of this data on the creative side with coming up with really great ads that reach you at a gut level rather than a head level?
I'll start with that one. I had actually in my notes, one of the things that we need to focus on over the next 5 years is creative, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier, it's that hook. I mean, you won't see my kids so frustrated as when they're watching live TV and they don't realize it and they try to fast forward through commercials. And obviously that's the environment that we live in. And so and how long before we're not watching any live television at all, whether unless it's a sporting event or breaking news or something of that nature. So not only is it the soul of the advertising and the persuasiveness of that ad, but being able to hook somebody in that first 2 or 3 seconds, otherwise you're going to lose them.
Yeah, when I spent years in radio sales after I did news for a while, but one of the things we would tell people to do good radio was you had to run the right frequency on the right station with the right target, but it had to be the right commercial. It had to be a good message. So you guys have all seen a really horrible commercial, and you're like, oh my God, if I see this commercial one more time, I'm going to blow my brains out. And then it's a high-frequency campaign, so it's the worst. So really great creative can cut through with a lot fewer runs. You know, you don't have to have the frequency if it's really awesome. I would also say just in content in general, today we're looking for multimedia journalists, not just a newspaper writer or not just a digital writer or a television producer, but we want someone who can kind of bring that content alive in any format. So if you write a long-form story in Atlanta, I need someone who can then package it up for television and then make it more urgent and shorter for radio and then make it come alive digitally and then update it as the story goes on, process storytelling, what makes it new today versus yesterday. So I think the creative way that you can do this storytelling is incredibly important, not just in producing commercials, but being creative about how you tell the story. And social plays into that too. That's not just a fun thing. There's great ways to take good news content and feed it through all of the social channels. So if you're good and you're good at being creative on how to bring that content alive, I think that is going to be a total tiebreaker.
I'd have to say that for the Chick-Fil-A brand, they're really, really deliberate about doing research with each one of their campaigns. There's research that's done about 6 to 8 months prior to that campaign happening, specific to what we want to say in that particular campaign. So it helps educate the creative team and the concepts that they bring to the table. And then internally what's done is we have all of the teams come together in what we call CRW sessions, which is creative review sessions. We have them every 2 weeks, and the teams come together and look at all of the concepts that have been put on the table by the agency of record. And we all have a real honest, sometimes real painful discussion around the creative. And that process can take it's taken as long as like 2-3 months to come up with a concept that's going to work for that particular campaign. I was able to share some of the creative process with students in Joanna Schrader's class yesterday. It is a very deliberate, painstaking process that we go through because Chick-fil-A is really committed to consensus building, and we want to make sure that all the teams are on board with the creative that we deliver. And the product always is emotional. It's always good, and it always comes out great. I may be biased, but we've had just some really, really powerful campaigns that have come out of this process, but it is a deliberate, long process that you have to be patient with to get the content that's really going to work and resonate with our audiences.
It's a way oversimplification, and I think maybe Zig Ziglar said it, but the truth is better than creativity. And sometimes that's the most creative product that you can come up with, is something that's genuine and honest. And I think the millennials coming up really respond to that. And so I think it's about engaging the brands while we're thinking about the audiences we want to reach, but talking about how can we be genuine with your message and straightforward with that message. I don't get as much as Jeff and everybody on the agency side in terms of an opportunity to spend long periods of time with our advertiser thinking about message. But in the quick efforts that interactions that I often have with clients, I think that's the number one thing that you can do is focus on being genuine and honest.
I think this has been some really nice discussion. I know there's 3 or 4 questions that are still hanging out there, but I think what we'll do is with the end of that question, I think we're going to close the panel for today. We're going to move into a time where Rick is going to come up and invite others to come up to the stage that have been on stage so far today, and you're going to have more opportunity to ask those questions. So if you have those questions, please hold on to them. Otherwise, can we please have a hand for the panel? I think we did a great job. Okay.